Hey everybody and welcome back. If you're new to the channel, my name's Chris and we're back here again today at the Sawmill. This is the Woodland Mills HM126. Now today what I want to talk to you about is what I do and how I approach getting the most lumber out of a log, and particularly what you do with that kind of low grade around the outside edges of a log type boards. And if you've been sawmilling for a while or even a little bit, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. If you have not, maybe you don't know. So I'm just gonna quickly take you over to a log, explain what I'm talking about, and then I'll show you some of the stockpile of that type of stuff that I have here now. So I actually ended up finding this, which is much easier to handle just to do a demonstration with. And what I'm talking about is when you usually approach cutting a log, so obviously you'd be looking at the end of it, your goal is to kind of make a cant, and my pencil's not going to show up too great, but you know, basically I could have done a better job drawing this, but you're going to end up with something like that. You know, you could probably get the edges out a bit further, but basically you're trying to turn this round log into a square, and then as you can imagine, this square cant you're left with, this is kind of going to be your like high quality lumber that you cut into boards, but you're still left with all this area here around the outside that, you know, you could probably get a couple boards here, you know, maybe a board there, maybe a board there, and maybe a board or two here kind of thing, just depending on the type of log that you're cutting. But that's kind of the area that I want to talk about today, is the edges, around the edges of a cant like this, and what you can do to try to maximize the amount of lumber that you get out of a log. So here's kind of an example of what I'm talking about. These couple boards were taken from around the outside of a log before I got my cant squared right off. So this doesn't actually go here, but you can probably imagine something like this, where this would have been the outside of the log, and then once you trim it off, you're left with something like this. And then, you know, maybe you need to get down another inch all the way around to get a nice square cant for your you know, higher quality boards. But then you're left with something like this, and to me this is very usable. And I've kind of been playing around with different ways to deal with this stuff, I guess is a good way to put it. I started off, you know, every time I'd cut a log, maybe you end up with 2, 3, 4 of these. I'd stand them up on the mill like this, and you know, make your passes, cut them down into boards. But what I was finding is I'm trying to find a happy medium between, you'd get your highest yield, I guess you would say, is if you went one at a time and tried to get, you know, the widest board out of each one of these as you possibly could. There's two problems with that. Is that would be extremely time consuming and not efficient at all. And the second one is that you just end up with so many different widths of boards that I'm sure once you go to do a project, you're just going to end up ripping it all down on the table saw to similar widths, if you can imagine that. So my new strategy has been to save up a bunch of these, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put them into a couple, 2, 3, we'll see what different widths I have, but I'll try to put these in a pile of similar sized boards, so you can see that these two are kind of a similar size, so that I can kind of group them together that way. And then I'll put the 2, 3 different groups on the mill, and then that'll also help me end up with whatever it is. I don't know yet, but maybe I'll end up with one stack of 6-inch wide boards, a stack of 5 and 4-inch wide boards, whatever you have. I'm not sure yet, but that'll just help me keep it kind of uniform, and hopefully that's kind of a good mix between efficiency and you know, getting the most yield out of each log. So that's the way I'm gonna do it. I hope you follow along, see how that works out for me. And I'm gonna get these into a pile now. One thing I'm trying to consider when I'm sorting all these just isn't the width, because obviously this is one of the wider boards, and on this side this is the pile that I'm going to attempt to get the widest boards out of, but it just tapers off so quickly and it's so bent that I know I'm not going to get a nice wide board out of this one. So I'm actually sticking this over into the smallest pile, hoping that I can get like a full length smaller board. So just kind of the method to the madness right now. Alright guys, so as you can tell, I got a pretty decent stack of all these, you know, low grade boards, I guess you could call them. This side's gonna end up being the widest, middle, and then the thinnest boards. So I think I'll start with the widest ones. I'll get them up onto the mill, see what a good happy medium is for these, because like I was saying, I don't want to end up with just a whole bunch of different widths. I'd like to keep, you know, that's why I'm separating them into piles. If I can keep them kind of in the same width area, that'll make it a lot easier for planning out projects and whatnot. So get this up on the mill and let's see what we can get out of it. So for this, I ended up leaving them at 7 inches wide. So as you can see, probably stuff like this, where, you know, I didn't get full 7-inch boards out of it all. Some of it tapers off near the end, like on this one, but they're not perfect boards like you'd buy at a big box store or something like that. But when you have your own mill and live on a farm like this, you know, just chucking stuff like this into the firewood bin is kind of insanity in my opinion. So I think, you know, safing them up like this, I got 7 inches wide out of these ones, so I'm gonna throw the other 2 piles up on there, and I think I'm gonna end up with a pretty good stack of lumber for stuff that's kind of the garbage parts of the log, so to speak. So I'll get those 2 done up and we'll see what we end up with. All right guys, so there you have it. As you can see behind me on the sawhorses now, I've laid out all that stuff that I just cut, and there's quite a good pile here. So these two first piles are 1x7s, and then I ended up getting 3 piles 1x5, and the one is 1x4. So that's kind of how it worked out best for me. Of course, you look at a lot of it and there's still some bark on the edges of pieces and whatnot, but for me this is about just kind of getting these edged down into, you know, sizes that I can kind of sort and pile for myself while trying to maximize the amount of lumber I'm getting to. Of course, you know, a board like this, for instance, that's still got the bark on it, maybe in the future, if I'm building something, you can always rip that off on the table saw, or, you know, you never know what project you're going to use it for right now. So, like for instance, this firewood crate I built the other day there, you can see a lot of this stuff that I was using for the frame, it still has the bark on it. So for stuff like that, it'll work out perfectly fine. So I'm really happy with that. All this lumber, something you have to remember is it's all off the outer edges of logs. So all of the lumber that's sitting here came off logs where I also got the high quality stuff out of the middle of the log, and then around the edges took this off, sawed it up, and ended up with another good whack of lumber here. So I understand it depends on your situation. Some people that deal with a lot of really small logs, it might not be worth it for you trying to get the stuff around the edges. It might end up just being firewood for you or whatever. But I think I'm kind of in the middle range. Some people that deal with huge logs all the time, you probably get a ton of lumber off the edges there. I think I do pretty well for the size of logs that I use. I try to maximize and use everything that I possibly can. It's a lot of effort getting all these logs to the mill, so you definitely want to use every bit of lumber that you can get out of it. But another reason I made this video is a lot of you guys that have been sawing for a long time, curious to know if you want to leave a comment. Do you think this is a good method? Do you have a better method or a different method that you think works better for kind of dealing with all these low quality kind of boards? And what do you use them for? Do you have different projects that you like using that kind of stuff for? And if you're somebody that's brand new to sawmilling, hopefully this helped you out a little bit to know, you know, how you can maximize the yield you get off each and every log. But anyways guys, that's going to be everything for me today. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.